The guest in my virtual chair today was Ellie. Ellie's here to give us a quick lesson on intersex.
If you guys really believe there's more than two genders, you're really confused and you need to get some science in your life. There's only male and female. So
I know this video is kind of old in internet time, and this is just one example of why she's incorrect. I would just like to take this opportunity to introduce you all to my left and right boobs. These girls are organic, grass-fed, grown right here at home titties. No implants, no hormones went into the making. And my sex chromosomes are XY, and I'm not trans. And I just think it's funny that she says you need to get some science in your life, because this is science. This is biology at work, sweetie. Yeah. I was going to try to make this video cute, but that's really all I had to say. Facts over feelings.
How cute was that? I'm crazy about Ellie, and we had an unbelievable conversation today that I cannot wait to share with you.
Hey baby, it's time for the Nikki Alpert Podcast. Come on, pull up a chair. We gonna have some fun.
Today's
Intersex Sex Awareness Day.
Yeah, but I'm not going to, yes, I was going to wait for Ellie to say that, but I wanted to say that I learned that the other day. So Ellie is intersex, and we're going to explain all about that. And so happy Intersex Day. Today, we're recording on the 26th of October, 2020, and it's the third year in the making, right?
I'm not sure, when it started. Yeah, maybe 3 years ago.
I think so.
And it's actually 2 years ago to the day that I decided to kind of come out on Instagram and share my story to my small, kind of more personal following.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's 2 years since that, which is big for me.
Happy anniversary.
And thank you so much. So that video, I guess, is kind of in response to a conversation that's kind of been happening a little bit on the internet, on TikTok, and just in our society and as a collective in general about gender and the controversy of, how can you be expressing your gender in our modern day society. So a lot of people are of the opinion that there are only two ways to do that. You can be female or you can be male. But I think their argument is a little bit, more than a little bit misguided, in the sense that, yes, we're talking about two different things here, gender and sex, which are two completely different things. And we think of them as kind of inextricable from each other. So I think what people really mean when they say there's only two genders is that there's only two sexes. And even that is not correct, right? So if you take that back then to the conversation with gender is sort of, we've been talking about it a little bit as a social construct, as something that we as humans decided that we wanted to adhere to. But in a lot of ways, biological sex is similar, because intersex people exist, and they exist outside of that that kind of binary structure of male and female.
Can you, for the people who've never heard of it, and by the way, since I've been reading about it, and every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, hey, have you heard of intersex? Do you know what it is? Mm-hmm. By and large, I'm going to say 95% of my friends who I've spoken to in the last month since I've met you, not a clue. Never even heard of it. And the few people who understand the English language have been able to be like, intersex, does it mean? Yes, it does. And they're like, what the fuck? What?
Right.
So tell everybody what that means.
Yeah, so the words inter and sex would be referring to biological sex. Inter is kind of between, so between the sexes. So intersex is really anything, it's used as an umbrella term because there's a lot of different ways to be intersex. I think there's over 30 different kind of traits or variations that can lead someone to be intersex.
And these are not like choices, like 30 different ways to be gay, straight, or bi. These are not choices, you guys. These are what's the word for that?
It's how you're born. Yeah, it's physical. It's like
genetic.
It's how your body, exactly. Yeah. So it depends on what you're talking about specifically, but some of this is genetic, some of this is, well, it's all genetic, but some of it is passed down, some of it is mutated. But I think it's kind of also important to talk about this stuff outside of the medical kind of like way of thinking about it, because these people are, full people who aren't just
people.
These intersex conditions, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, so there's kind of these different variations. So intersex, the umbrella term is used to talk about people who are, who's, so it takes into account your chromosomes, your hormones, your body parts, your secondary sex characteristics, all of that. So it's some kind of combination of those things are resulting in your body not fully traditionally being in those definitions of either male or female. So like I said, between the sexes.
But I don't think between the sexes, from everything I've read, it's not about being between the sexes. It's about being a little bit of both.
Yeah.
In the 30 different variations of intersex, let's talk about your situation.
The medical term for it is androgen insensitivity, and I have the version of that is complete. So basically, well, do you want to go like the full story?
Oh yeah, by the way, the video I saw, another video I saw of Ellie was like, by the way, you guys, these titties, this is my left titty, this is my right titty, they are homegrown and I have a vagina. And so I want you to talk like that, because people who don't have any idea, and also the fact that you're so loving and silly and accepting and comfortable and easy about it is how the world should be. And so be who you are. Show me and my viewers and the world, this is your stage, sister. Stand out for, like, be who you are and talk to me exactly how you talk to anybody.
Okay. So kind of going back all the way to the beginning, when I was and I apologize if people like are uncomfortable with this kind of conversation, but I'm just
no, we don't apologize. If you don't want to watch this, turn it off. That's a choice. But we're putting it out there. Do not apologize.
So way back in the day when I was a toddler, so this is like around
way
the
back
year
in the
2000.
day. She's 23. Way back in the day, dinosaurs.
So I was a toddler, and my mom was giving me a bath, and she stood me up in the bath, and she noticed that there was something happening in my labia area. So the outer part of the kind of that like genital area. And there was something, the vulva, there was something hanging there or kind of protruding. And it didn't seem like it was causing me any pain. And then when they laid me back down, on the changing table, it kind of went away, and, stand me back up, it comes back down. So they were like, okay, this clearly is not, shouldn't be happening, quote unquote, should not be happening. So after a little bit of investigation by the doctors, they found that these were my ovaries that needed to be moved back up into my stomach wherever they belong, intra-abdominal area. So they performed that surgery, a double inguinal hernia, and
they opened
I guess
you up
years
to do
later,
that, or do they go vaginally to do that?
They opened me up. I have some scars down there from that, because I don't think they were able to do it laparoscopically as they would be able to do it today.
But when they opened you up, did they know what they saw inside and just never say anything?
I believe that is the case. So
because we'll get into this later, but doctors lie and doctors shame and doctors do surgeries that they shouldn't be doing, which we will get into. But let's start with the fact that, like, yes, you were part of that medical stupidity.
So we believe, my family believes, that they knew that what they were looking at wasn't ovaries, and they neglected to inform us of that information and just kind of left us to figure it out later, which we then did. When I was about 15, I still hadn't started my period, and that combined with the feeling that my parents had when I had that hernia surgery, that they were just a little bit unsettled. They were like, this doesn't seem right. And my mom was just like, okay, she's 15, she still hasn't started her period. So
but normal puberty was starting? Did you have boobies and stuff by then?
I did not. I think I had a later puberty. I'm kind of unclear as to whether or not that was because of the AIS or not. Okay. If that was just its own, late bloomer type of thing. Some people with AIS experience that late puberty, and some start puberty, but I didn't really have the boobies until I was like 17 or 18.
I'm still waiting for mine.
They were really small for a really long time, and I thought that was going to be it. But yeah, so then at around 14, I had a bunch of tests done, and eventually, after a really long, difficult process, we were given this diagnosis, and my parents spent a week or two kind of doing all the research that they could, figuring out who to talk to, talking to the rest of my family about it before they kind of sat me down and told me, this is the deal with you. They wanted me to know that I was perfectly healthy, that this wasn't something that made me sick or anything like that. Because unfortunately, so many people who are intersex have to deal with, like you said, just
the shame.
The shame, and what's been used to treat intersex people historically is a concealment-based approach. So either telling parents and not telling the person themselves that they're intersex, or anything or not even telling parents, keeping it a secret. A lot of people
or telling the parents to keep it a secret.
Or telling the parents to keep it a secret.
And the children.
Telling the children, or telling the adult themselves to keep it a secret, that you shouldn't share this. There's no one else like you. We don't really know what to do with you. We're going to do X, Y, and Z surgery, sometimes without consent, on children, with or without parents' consent.
Right.
And some of that
they didn't tell your parents what they were doing when they figured it out?
Right. I mean, they told my parents, but they didn't tell them the full story. And we weren't able to kind of finish that story out, because by the time we had that diagnosis and had that story, I guess, presented to us through that diagnosis, the doctor who performed that surgery had passed away, but had ironically written a book on child pediatric surgery malpractice or something like that.
Oh God, which he would have been facing. Yeah. Okay, so when you were 15 and you started going through all 14, 15, they found out via ultrasound that you had no uterus, no ovaries. Do you have a cervix?
I don't have a cervix. So I had a vaginal opening that was really, really small and very, there was just not a lot of room in there. So shallow and small. The medical jargon associated with some of these things is so effed up. The medical term for the vaginal opening that I have is called a blind pouch. Yeah, and I just want that to go away. I don't want to think about that. That sounds just like
a kangaroo. What the hell?
Just you don't want to have a blind pouch. You don't.
I mean, look, there are worse names for vaginas.
But I'm proud of it.
There are worse names for it. So maybe just let it go, or don't let it go. But, okay, so they find out that via ultrasound, they're like, well, this is weird. And not weird, sorry, but that's probably something. Yeah. That's the wrong word. But then they also found out that those ovaries that they pinned back up were
testes. So they're basically underdeveloped testes, and some intersex people, some people with CAIS refer to them as their gonads, some refer to them as their testes. Gonads just being kind of the neutral term for that structure that exists in both ovaries or females and some intersex people, right? So they found out that those were testes, so they don't have sperm in them, and they need to be exposed to the testosterone. So why don't I explain the condition a little bit more fully, just so that people kind of get a grasp on it. So it's complicated, but essentially when a fetus is developing, the blueprint, or kind of the foundation, or the default, is female. Right. And so the system kind of defaults into the labia and the vulva and all of that. So when I was developing, in order for the penis to develop in utero, it needs testosterone, and my body is insensitive to androgens, meaning that it produces testosterone from the glands, but isn't able to receive it or recognize it as such. So my sex chromosomes are XY,
which is male.
Which is male, right?
Because XX is women, just for those who don't know.
Right. Women. Yeah. Traditionally, that's how we think of those. So intersex people can fall into additional sex chromosome variations: XXY, XO. You can look them up. There's tons of different ways to be. Yeah, a lot. So I didn't develop any of those male genitalia because of the insensitivity to the androgens. So And for that reason, the sperm did not develop either. So
is androgen
kind of
hormone? Is androgen a hormone, or is it testosterone?
Androgens are a group of hormones of which testosterone is a big player.
But you don't resist estrogen, you just resist testosterone.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just the androgen group of hormones.
Okay.
So what my body does when it says, what is this? We don't know what this testosterone is. It automatically converts it into estrogen through a process called aromatization, which is where all of us, male and female, intersex, whatever, that's where everyone gets their estrogen. It's converted from testosterone.
Right.
So even though I'm XY, which is typically male, I actually have no male hormones kind of affecting my body, which is hence the more female kind of phenotypic presentation, or the way that I look is female,
right.
As we think of it.
And from what I gather from the few conversations we have, you identify as female.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting thing. I've just been thinking a lot about that lately, and I'm not sure that that's kind of, I don't know if that's fully who I am. I feel comfortable with that label, I guess. I guess more like in the past, I definitely have. I'm starting to question that a little bit, and thinking about how my body exists outside of all of these kind of binary confines and restrictions in a more societal way, I would say. So I think I'm definitely thinking a lot about that recently, and thinking that, using she, her pronouns might not feel like enough for me and kind of like encapsulate who I really am. But
you're more than that.
Right. But for now, that's definitely, for now, that's definitely, I still feel comfortable, kind of as a female in the world. But that's definitely on my mind, and I think it might be changing soon.
And what does that change mean to you?
What does that change mean to me? I guess it hasn't really evolved or taken full form yet. So I guess I would be unable to say what it means for me now, because I think it's something that I might be exploring more in the future. But I think it's just, I'm struggling with existing as a woman and feeling that might not, right, like you said, that I'm more than that. And
how honest is that if you just are that to everybody, unless you further take the time to explain? And I mean, who cares about honesty unless you don't feel the integrity of it. But
sure,
if you just present and don't say anything, then I'm guessing, and by the way, this is just because I like to do this, but I feel like if it were me, I feel like if I just presented as a woman to everybody, that I would want to say, but that's not all I am.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And so just to make myself feel like I'm validated and you understand the truth of me and everybody else like me.
Yeah.
Like me, but in 30 different variations of me and all of that too.
Yeah. I think it's important also to realize that, like, if anyone chooses to not identify with either kind of binary gender as we've thought about it, and be gender nonconforming or non-binary or any one of those, that their presentation isn't necessarily defined by that label, and that, non-binary people don't owe people their androgyny, and that they can present in any way that they would want to. So I'm comfortable looking the way that I look right now. And,
I can't imagine why you wouldn't be.
One day
beautiful.
Thank you. One day maybe I'll shave my head or do something crazy, and maybe I won't, but those two things are very separate, and I think we need to recognize that.
Okay, so also separate is the idea that I think most people, I've read that people seem to, who still don't understand it when they've read a little bit about it or a lot about it, think that trans and intersex are the same thing, which they are completely not, because, well, go ahead and explain the difference there, because you know it.
So trans people and intersex people are different. I think that you can definitely be
intersex and trans, sure.
So if I said one day, I'm a boy, I identify as male, I'm still intersex, and then
right.
it's tricky because who was I born as? Was I born as a female? And then if I choose to be a male, is that trans? I think yes, because I think trans is kind of, it's changing the gender identity that you were given at birth. It's deciding that doesn't fit me, the way that people perceived me, either physically, mentally, however I was perceived. That gender isn't mine, and that's not who I am. And intersex is, you're born into this body that immediately rejects that whole binary and says, I'm not either one of those things. I exist outside of that. So
do you feel like a combination of, or do you feel like a completely, like, not just two sexes, but a third?
Sorry, what?
So do you identify that with, like, if you're born with both, are you a combination of both, like intersex suggests, or in between, or do you consider it a third gender?
I definitely don't consider it a third gender. Like being born as intersex, you're kind of like, it's your biological sex and not your gender that's necessarily different. Like intersex people, like normal people, like anyone else, exist in any of those categories. So there's intersex people who are male, female, and gender non-conforming or non-binary. So I would say there's a lot of, like, in many cultures and many communities around the world, there's more than two genders recognized. There's societies or, cultures that have 3 genders, 4 genders, 5 genders. And I see intersex as a little bit separate from that. I think if you're intersex and you, I guess I don't necessarily see it as a third category, but rather, like you said, kind of like outside of that binary restriction.
Okay. So, and I cut you off, and you were talking
That's okay.
about, now I can't remember where you were going with that, but just the idea that it's not trans, and it's not a sexuality.
No.
And so I don't think people understand the difference of that in any sense of the word. Like, I think most people who are so not open just think that if you're a girl, you're straight and you love boys, and if you're a boy, you're straight and you love girls, and if you're not, it's all wrong, or whatever that stupid stuff is. And sorry if that offends somebody, but not really. So let's talk about 2 things. Have you been with men? Have you been with girls? Who are you? What do you, or do you not want to talk about that? I'm totally cool if you don't.
I don't discriminate. Yeah. I've had experiences, with all different types of people. And, right now, I definitely I don't see that as, who knows the intricacies of the brain and like what goes on in there. I don't necessarily see that as like being connected to my intersexness. That's kind of how I've always felt, even before I knew that this is who I was. Just kind of like everyone's, as long as you're cute, I'm into you, kind of. It doesn't matter to me how you identify.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because my children are around your age. And so they were raised around the idea that, like, gay, straight, whatever, who cares? And in fact, in their high school, they voted the first homecoming queen and queen.
Oh, wow. That's
and
amazing.
then they did it another time in the 4 years that they were attending their high school. And cool. They didn't understand why that was ever an issue for anybody. So I kind of feel like, and maybe you have, I'm sure you've read about it, but had you been born at a different time, certainly you are aware that this could have been a whole different experience. And now with the LGBTQ stuff, and by the way, speaking of that, does I belong there for intersex, LGBTQI?
Yeah, I believe it does. I think there's people, both intersex and not, that would disagree. Because people see that as a way to signify their choice to be out in some cases, and or their choice to kind of have that, let that be known and let that be something that they're proud of. And I see it as intersex being a part of that, because it's like we talked about how trans and intersex is different, but I think for many intersex people and trans people, kind of the discrimination is coming from a similar place of the absence of the heteronormativity in that body, and the rejection of those binaries. So I think that intersex should be in there for that reason.
So for the awareness and for the right to be acknowledged.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so many people don't know what it means. So
many. And by the way, the numbers suggest, and so if you just say the percentage, I think it means nothing to anybody, but the one fact that the idea that there are as many intersex people as there are redheads in the world, and you can see red hair. So if you think you've never met an intersex person, you're probably wrong.
Yeah. And it's around the same percentage as Jewish people who live in America, I think was the other number, which is pretty I think another one is, it's around 1.7 or 2% of the population. And it's, I think that's like the population of, I could be wrong, don't quote me on it, but it's like the population of Russia. It's like there's a lot of people like this. Like, you know, there's a lot of people like this, and it's hard to recognize them because it is something that's invisible, and it's something that can fall into any of those other LGBTQIA categories. You know, you can be a gay person and you can be intersex, you can be a straight person and you can be intersex. So I think for that reason, some people don't want it included in the acronym.
Right. The idea that there are 30 different variations of this condition. Am I wrong to say that yours is, it's not less dramatic or any of that, but there are some people who are born where the minute they come out, the doctors know something's wrong because they're ambiguous genitalia. So they have a penis that isn't fully developed, or a clitoris that is way too long, or something that is just bound together and doesn't look like anything. And we have to talk about all the surgeries that they do on these babies without, which messes with their head, because inside they get to make a choice, and outside somebody made a choice for them.
Sure.
So let's start here. Is it easier for you think, because of the part of the condition that you ended up having as opposed to some other people?
I think when it comes to like sexual experiences and like that intimacy, I have made it a rule for myself to make sure that I trust the person who I'm gonna like engage in that with, to know about my body, and to be fully aware that, you know, when you go up inside there, it's a dead end. You know, you can't, there's nothing, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere for, you know, any fluids to travel to. Because I don't know. That's just my rule.
But I mean,
on that.
when typical people have sex, it's not like it. Yes, semen can go into places, but it's not like it opens up and it comes out your throat. I mean, it's not like we're all sort of a dead end. But I mean, some of us. I mean, typically we're 5 inches deep. So, have you done anything to make that deeper? I know that you can stretch it and do all that stuff. Have you done any of that?
I did when I was younger. So when I was in high school, I used, they're called dilators. So they're a little bit like medicalized sex toys in a way.
Yeah.
So they kind of the ones that I had was like a detachable handle with different sized, like,
was it fun?
Inserts. I tried to make it fun. Yeah, I was kind of with the other intersex people that I had met and talked with, and gone to like support group conferences and things like that. I kind of got a little bit of an idea on how to start that before, and that was like a really, really great first exposure to that. You know, it wasn't coming from my doctors being like, "Hey, you should try this,"
because that would be gross, I would think.
Right. And like, it's good for doctors to recommend that stuff to people and just, you know, offer that up as an option and say like, hey, you know, because even cis women have troubles with small vaginal openings. And
even what women?
Cisgendered women. So people that aren't intersex or aren't trans or anything like that.
Okay.
typical XX people. That can be a useful tool for people of all different types of, whatever. So I learned about the dilation process when I was pretty young, which I think was good for me, just because it ended up being something that I felt was important for my sex life and for my sex life with myself and with other people.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to it, and it was kind of recommended to try to make it fun. Don't try to make it something that's a drag or something that you feel like you have to do, or something that feels like medicalized. Make it your own, make it enjoyable. So that was something that I had experience with in high school. And I think as I kind of just was doing that, having sex with other people, having sex with myself, it just ended up being something that resulted in that area just generally kind of adapting over time to be something that is a little bit bigger and easier to maneuver with than it was originally, when I was younger. Right, and who knows if that would have happened with time naturally, but I don't think it would have.
Not only that, the idea that as a young woman you became totally comfortable with your vagina and sexuality. I mean, for some women, that doesn't happen until they're 50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's listen, I always say that for me anyway, that I think in my life, diabetes was a gift because it taught me about compassion and empathy for other people, and that somebody's always going, and mine is invisible kind of, but not in the same way. But so I would imagine that somewhere in here, are you grateful for some of this?
I am. Yeah. I mean, I think like you said, it enabled me to see all of these things in a totally new way and have newfound, like you said, empathy for other people's experiences, because it's just so vast, what people's bodies can look like, what people's bodies exist as is just it's enormous. It's so all encompassing, and anything you can really think of, I say it in relation to things like ears and noses. Mm-hmm. There are so many different types. No two people's eyes or chins or whatever look the same. And it's the same with genitals. And we don't really think about that often enough. Yeah. I think porn is a big reason for that. But we don't think about everyone's genitals looking differently. We kind of have one image of, penis looks like this, but it's not like that at all. Right. And intersex people are a great example of that.
Well, okay. Well, speaking of that, and the people who are born with androgynous genitalia.
So going back to what I was explaining before, I've kind of made it a rule to explain to my partners, this is what my body looks like. But some people don't really have a choice. So on the outside, my genitals look typically female, with the labia and the vulva and everything like that, the clitoris. But
wait, did you develop hair?
Yes, but not. So I recently started it's a long story.
Oh, and you had your testes out recently.
Yes, yeah. So
I'm sorry, let's go back to that before we get into something, because I just saw that. I hadn't gone back to your TikTok until yesterday. And I think you put that up within the last couple of days, which it seems timing wise that you would either just had them out when I reached out to you, within
it happened January of last year.
Oh, okay. So not just
a little less than a year ago.
Why did you decide to do that?
Why? So it was recommended to me by the doctors that I was seeing to have them out because there's a chance that they become cancerous. And that number is a little bit blown out of proportion, I think, by doctors a lot, just because of that kind of, you want to have people look a certain way, and you want to, normalize people's bodies, which is really unhealthy, an unhealthy practice, and
put on a kid or a person of any age.
People do cosmetic surgeries on children, vaginoplasties and things like that, which is really unfortunate, especially if
clitorectomies, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So, oh God, where was I going with that?
You were saying that while you had your testes out. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. So not to placate my doctors, but just to kind of keep an eye on the testes that were moved back up, I would have an ultrasound or an MRI or some kind of scan once a year at the clinic that I went to, or that I guess I still go to it, but I guess I don't really need to go to there anymore because I don't have them anymore. So there's nothing to kind of be checking up on except for my hormone levels. Right. So it was detected this past January. There were just some spots. There were some really small, bright spots there, and they just said, the testes themselves were very small. So I think like 2 by 1 centimeter, like very little guys in there. So they were unable to tell me based on the scans what it was. They had no idea. This could be. It's not. I remember like it being hammered home, like this isn't nothing, but we don't know how potentially dangerous it could be, and we don't know how long it's been there because the other scan that I had was a year before that. So I made the decision to get them taken out just because I didn't want to not know, and I had been able to keep them and go through puberty naturally, even though it was a little bit late on the later side, but I was able to go through puberty naturally, which was a really big thing for me. When I first found out about it, they said, to be safe, we could take these out now. And I said, well, would anything change? And they would say, well, you'd have to go through puberty on artificial hormones. And I said, no, that doesn't sound good. So at this point I was 22, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, take them out. I don't think it was really, this stuff is so kind of not new, but a lot of times when people first find out about it, they have them immediately removed on the doctor's recommendation. Right. And that was something that I didn't want to do when I first found out about it. Some people, like I said, some people don't have a choice when they're diagnosed with this. It's just something that often happens automatically with the diagnosis of AIS, or a couple other intersex things. But so I decided to have them out just because I wanted to feel completely safe and that nothing was going to go wrong in the time until I had them checked out again or whatever. I just wanted to err on the side of absolute caution. So I had them out and I started estrogen hormone replacement therapy. And so I take that through a dermal patch. So that's how I get my estrogen. So when I started taking the estrogen, I developed a little bit more like body hair on my legs and on my genitals, and a little bit, and not even really, I don't really grow hair in my armpits. But, I started having a little bit more like oil production. I think it's just because of the lack of estrogen that I had before. I didn't really have a lot of hormones flowing around, just because the testes were pretty small.
Were they doing anything?
Yeah. So they were producing.
Oh, they were producing testosterone that was turning into estrogen.
Yes.
Right?
I think I know that it's a little more complicated than that, but essentially, yeah.
Okay.
They were a big player in the process of that.
So they were providing you the hormones.
Yeah. So with the pubic hair, like I had a little bit, and now I have a little bit more, but definitely less than your average like cisgender woman.
Lucky. Lucky.
It's less maintenance for sure. Yeah.
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 All right. So they did serve a purpose. And so was it an emotional thing to have them removed? Yeah, it definitely was. I think I was generally very anxious about having surgery in general. I was just like, I think I had some not so great like repressed memories from when I was a little kid having that surgery, that I was just not like, obviously I had no idea what was going on. And so like taking off the bandages was honestly a little bit traumatic for me, just because I spent so much time with like clear tape over the bottom of my like stomach area when I was little. And I definitely remember hating having those bandages on when I was like 3. But there was only one surgery when you were 3, or were there more?
There was one, but it happened on both sides. So there were 2 scars and two sets of bandages, and the same thing happened. So I was able to have them out laparoscopically. So I have 2 really, or teeny 3 tiny. Actually, really, yeah, one in my belly button and then 2 kind of right next to the belly button.
Right.
But yeah.
But they took a piece of you, so that was emotional.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
and it was a tough transition to start the estrogen replacement. And I think I might want to start doing a testosterone injection instead, because I have to wear these all the time. And I've kind of figured out like the logistics of it a little better now. So I have like some tape that I put over them, like clear tape, so that they don't like, there was just a lot of residue. They were sticky and itchy and like just a pain in the ass. So I figured out that a little bit, but the testosterone shots are a weekly injection, and it wouldn't, you know, even if I wanted, or if I wanted to be masculinized in any way, it wouldn't really work. Like taking testosterone wouldn't facilitate that change, because my body doesn't know what it is.
You reject it.
Thinks that it's estrogen. So taking testosterone could be another form of hormone replacement I could do, and would be a lot lower maintenance. So
how are you feeling on the estrogen?
I feel pretty good. I think it gave me a little bit more of, I think it helps with my kind of weight distribution and the way that my body holds onto fat. I think I just had such little estrogen. And you know, you need your hormones to kind of, to keep up your body weight in some cases, and in some bodies. And I was just, I was like on a little bit on the too, I don't want to say too thin.
No judging for anybody else.
I was feeling a little bit like I don't know the right word that I want to use, but I like the patches because they keep the weight on my body a little bit more, and I'm able to just feel a little bit healthier on them. I just think I wasn't having the correct amount of estrogen in my body beforehand. So that was all a little bit out of whack, but I feel great on it now. At the beginning, it was a little bit, I was just having like some mood swings, a breakout or two here and there. But I feel good on it now. I think if I could take the T shots, it would just be a little bit less hassle. Yeah, it was difficult for me in middle school when everyone started to get their periods, when my friends were starting to get their periods, and I felt like a little bit left out. So there were times
you lied about it.
I used to carry like tampons around with me just in case anyone asked, and I could be someone.
Of course, I have them.
Yeah, of course. I think I had like a fake period day, like a day of the month that I like referred to as me starting my period, which was just a lie. Like it was just not real. And I've talked to some other people who are similar to me, and they have similar stories of like just kind of, because it's something that like, and it's something that people kind of like dread, or like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to, I'm starting my period, what a pain. But when you're younger,
it's a rite of passage also.
Right. It's a sign of like being mature and growing up, and
you want to fit in. You want to feel like the world thinks you should be for some stupid reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so clearly you were not always as comfortable with this whole thing as you are now. What kind of work did that take? Was that because your parents were so great about it and you were lucky with your doctors?
I was definitely lucky with my parents. Yeah. I had a couple of doctors throughout the years, and so about a little over a year after I got all of that knowledge and that information about myself, there's a support group, a big conference. They just changed the name of it, so I would have to look it up. But it's a national conference / support group. So they have some healthcare providers that are there. It's like a CME, a continuation of medical education, that some healthcare providers go to, but it's also a place for intersex people to congregate and find support. So that happened to be in Boston, which is just about a 2-hour drive from me.
Are you very involved with that whole community still?
I not currently. It's kind of something that I went to it 6 or 7 years in a row, and then it's been about 2 years since I've been back, but it's gone through a lot of changes in the past 2 years. So it's definitely something that I want to continue to be involved in the future, but that I'm not super integrated in currently. I still am in contact with a lot of people that I met throughout those various meetings, but the first one just happened to be in Boston, which was super close to us. So it travels around the country, around Canada as well. So my mom just said, let's drive to Boston. Let's just see what it's all about. And I was kind of wary on it, but my parents were like, if you don't want to go, not a big deal. We can just spend the day or the weekend in Boston. It'll be fine. No pressure. So I went, and I was super intimidated, and I was super scared. And it was something that, like, between the time of finding out and the time of being there for the first time, I was really a little bit in denial about it, a little bit like, this doesn't feel like me, this isn't right, because a big part of it is also not being able to have children, like biologically, or so that was definitely really hard for me to get through, and something that, even when you're 14, you're kind of like, what's my life going to look like when I'm an adult? And that always involved like having children and having a big family for me, just because I come from a big family, and we really like spending time together, and like I'm very family oriented. But so that was really hard, and I definitely was kind of in the weeds with that for a long time, and just kind of like being down on myself. And so being at that first conference was pretty intimidating to me, just because there were so many people that seemed to be so comfortable with themselves and with their intersexness. So I was I wasn't feeling it. I was just nervous. I mean, I was just so incredibly anxious. And my mom said, just go to this dinner. It's an event that happens over the weekend. So the first thing is on Thursday night. And I went into, little conference room in a hotel in Boston, where there were other people my age, and my mom just kind of shooed me in, and I was like, very timid, like kind of waiting by the door, and just this group of people who were a little bit older than me, some of them, just around my age, were like, come have pizza, join us. And they were all just being silly and lovely and wonderful and amazingly welcoming. And, that night we didn't even talk about anything related to being intersex. We just talked and laughed, and it was the most amazing, like, heartwarming. I just felt instantly at home and like instantly welcomed into that group. And it was just like the most magical thing ever, because I didn't have to kind of hide or explain myself to anyone, just because when I found out, I felt like I needed to share it with my friends, and there were like a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of like me not explaining it well, and people thinking that I was a boy and thinking that,
right.
All these different things.
But here nobody asked, because everybody knew.
Everyone knew, and so
that had to be wild.
Right. And so I decided to stay for the weekend, and it was just the most amazing experience. And I went back, 5 or 6 years in succession, and it's I've been able to mentor some of the younger people who have joined.
Right, you've been that person. Come on in, have pizza.
Yeah,
you turn into that girl.
It's really, really beautiful. There's a lot of great experiences that I've had there, and just met so many amazing, wonderful people. And it's the main reason why I feel so comfortable talking about it at this point to people in my life, and now to people on the internet in like a big way, or a big-ish way. Just because I would like to kind of be that person, like you said, be that person for my younger self, and for anyone who's experiencing those feelings of confusion or loneliness or shame or fear, just because of the lack of information or lack of connection. Like, I really value that ability that I have to show people, intersex or not, that being intersex is it shouldn't be associated with those feelings, and those feelings are normal to feel as you are kind of uncovering yourself and uncovering your own body, but that it can be, that you can move past those things and have a beautiful, like, full life, because unfortunately, just like I said, for some people, either told by their doctors or their parents that this is a shameful thing, and this is something that should be hidden and not talked about, and I just want to show people, whether they're intersex or not, that intersex people are thriving and living fully,
I love what you're doing. Okay, so just to wrap it up, and not because I'm done, because like I said, I could just keep going on and on and on. And if you were in my chair, you would come back 6 weeks later, and I would have a billion more questions for you.
I would love to get my hair done by you one day. I would love to come out to you and see what you can do.
Can I tell you how much I love that? Because I first of all, I miss doing hair. Second of all, I do feel like when I do this, I become friendly with people, and I would love to have you sit in my chair. And so we'll do that at one point for certain. What's your message? Good, me too. What is your message to somebody who today finds out that their child is intersex? What would you say to them?
Oh, wow. What would I say to someone who, that this is that fear and that gut reaction, and that knowing that your child is somehow different and somehow possibly vulnerable is a scary feeling, but that this isn't a scary experience or a scary life that I've been having. Right. That this is something that's I have a full life, and you wouldn't imagine like the parents that I have talked to through my connections with the support group, who are at a place of such fear and such confusion, and just seeing and hearing and talking to someone who is like me, who has developed as I have, just to being a happy person. Even people are so relieved to hear from me and to hear from my parents and their experiences with my journey. It's something that obviously will affect the life of that person throughout their life, but it's not something that people are necessarily defined by at all. You know, it's just a piece of the experience. It's not the experience, and it's not something that's going to define that person's path or their journey if they don't want it to. I mean, some people, choose to become big activists or big voices, and your decision to do that or to tell anyone is completely your own. I think a lot of times with people choosing to kind of come out as intersex, oh my God, I just lost my train of thought again. That it's important that it's important to remember the difference between something being private and something being a secret. So I think for me, it was presented as something that should be kept as a secret. And when I kind of transitioned that in my own mental thinking to, it's something that's private. So it's not something that other people deserve to know if I don't want
unless
them to know.
You want to tell them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you do openly and share with people, which is so beautiful. I have one more question now.
Sure.
What's the best thing about being intersex?
It's just I love that my body is not in that binary, and that I decided in my biology somewhere that I didn't want to fuck with that, and that I just wanted to exist as kind of as a little bit of an enigma, as a little bit of a mysterious body. Like, I don't know if that's a great way to put it.
Yes, it is.
Just the fact that I just think it's cool. I just think that it's cool that you don't have to be one of these two things.
Like that, you don't have to be like everybody else.
Right. And I think a lot of people would disagree and say that it's abnormal and whatnot, but it's something that I've come to really embrace in its difference, in its, non-heteronormative ways. Yeah.
I love that. And it's funny, you aren't seeing all of Ellie's personality that you see on her TikTok. And by the way, her TikTok,
yeah, go look at my TikTok.
Yeah, her TikTok is Hot Cheeto Ambassador, which I had no idea what that meant. And then can you tell everybody how you explained the name of that to me?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I guess I'm just kind of taking a more ironic twist on the influencer industry and people who are, ambassadors of certain brands and get, deals on Instagram for selling a watch or whatever. I would love to be someone who gets paid to endorse Hot Cheetos on the internet. That's just something that's a dream of mine. So if anyone would like
knows
to make
anybody
that come
at the Cheetos
true,
company.
That's just a really high goal that I have for myself, because I love hot Cheetos. And that was something that I made. Like, I had no intention of like gaining any following on TikTok. So that was just something that I put there as kind of a funny like joke just for myself to see. I don't think I'm going to change anytime soon. Yeah.
I don't think you should. And by the way, both my kids were like, Mom, she probably just loves hot Cheetos. And I was like, so she made it her name? They were like, duh. Oh, okay, whatever. Okay, I love that. So like I said, you're not seeing all of Ellie's freeness and her silliness because she's trying to inform you guys. But on her TikTok, there is a lot of what you just saw now with the smile in her face and the, you know, the cussing and the comfortable, just she's a woman who has embraced all of this and wants to let you know anything you have to ask. There is nothing that you can't ask her. She says, ask me everything. You guys will love watching her on TikTok. She doesn't do some stupid dancing and all that stuff. I mean, there's some of that, but that's fun.
A few dances.
but it's all part of watching her embrace this and wanting you to know what it is. Ask her anything. She's an open book. And I hope this makes you explore more about it. And I'm guessing all of you have met somebody who's intersex and you have no idea. And that's just freaking crazy. Where's the best place to send somebody if they want to become an ally?
So 2 places I would say, I mean, you can go to interactadvocates.org, and they have a lot of resources for allies and intersex people as well. So if you're newly intersex, look there for sure. And then they're on Instagram, Interact Advocates, and then also on Instagram is Intersex Justice Project, I believe it's called, on Instagram. It has a lot of great resources. And you can ask me, you can DM me on TikTok.
And she answers them because that's how I reached out to Ellie.
Yes. I'm very active in the DMs. A lot of people have questions. I've even there's intersex people who have found me and said, I don't know anyone else who's intersex. I would love to chat. And then, I invite them to do a Zoom or a FaceTime too, just to because I believe that is the most important thing that I experienced is talking to other intersex people.
I love everything you do. I love your personality. I love your embracing of the entire world and not being identified by any one thing, but just living your journey in this world. And you're not my kid, but if you were, and I am just proud of you. I think you're beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ellie, thank you so much. And I really want to do this again. And I do want to do your hair one day.
I would love that.
All right. This is not the end for us women. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.